They say in Lagos, when a big man falls in love, the whole city feels the tremors. But when Obiora Namdi fell, it wasn't just Lagos that shook. It was the very foundations of heaven and hell. This is the story of a man who built an empire with his bare hands, only to watch it crumble the moment he touched her skin. A story of a woman so pure she could have saved him. If only he hadn't loved her like a man drowning love's air, desperately, violently, and far too late. Before we begin, let me ask you this. Can love be so powerful it destroys the very thing it cherishes? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about desire, redemption, and the thin line between salvation and damnation. Obiora Namdi was not born a monster. He was made into one, piece by careful piece, in the unforgiving crucible of Lagos Island. At 42, he was what the newspapers called an oil mogul and what the streets called Oga Patapata, the ultimate boss. His name opened doors from Abuja to London. His frown could collapse stock prices. His smile, rare as a blue moon over Bar Beach, could make governors sweat with relief. But success in Nigeria doesn't come from prayer alone. Obiora's hands, now manicured and adorned with a Patek Philippe watch worth more than most, Lagos homes, had once been stained with sins he tried to wash away with expensive cognac and charitable donations to his village. Church in an amber state, he had betrayed mentors who trusted him, crushed competitors who dared challenge him. There were whispers, always, whispers in Lagos, of a rival who had mysteriously drowned in the Badagry creeks, of a whistleblower who fled to South Africa and was never heard from again. Obiora told himself these were the prices of greatness, that in the jungle of Nigerian business you either devoured or were devoured. He had chosen to be the lion, but lions, even the fiercest, grow tired and lonely. His Banana Island mansion, with its infinity pool overlooking the lagoon and its staff of 17, felt like a mausoleum. The women who graced his bed, beauty queens. Socialites, the daughters of senators, were as beautiful and as empty as the crystal chandeliers that hung in his hallways. They wanted his money, his connections, his name in the society pages. They did not want him because there was no him left to want. He had sold his soul so many times, he wasn't sure he still had one. Until that Saturday morning in Ojuelegba Market. Obiora didn't shop in Ojuelegba. Men like him sent drivers to luxury supermarkets in Victoria Island. But that morning, his latest vehicle, a custom bulletproof G-Wagon, had broken down near the National Stadium, and his impatient nature wouldn't let him wait for a replacement. So he walked, his security detail trailing nervously, into the chaos of one of Lagos's most vibrant markets. The assault on his senses was immediate. The smell of fresh pepper mixing with raw fish. The cacophony of traders haggling in Yoruba, Igbo, and Pidgin English. The crush of humanity moving like a river through narrow aisles. It was everything his insulated life was not. Raw, real, alive. And then he heard her singing. The voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk, pure, clear, achingly beautiful. An old Igbo gospel song his mother used to hum while cooking. Chineke na biko chekwabem. God, my father, please protect me. He followed the sound like a man in a trance. She was sitting on a low stool behind a modest stall of yams and vegetables. A girl who couldn't have been more than 23. Her wrapper was faded Ankara, her blouse simple and cheap, but she wore them with the unconscious grace of a queen. Her skin was the deep, rich brown of kola nut, and when she smiled at a customer, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, Obiora felt something he hadn't felt in 2 decades. He felt human. How much for the yams? He found himself asking, his voice rough with an emotion he couldn't name. She looked up and the world stopped. Her eyes were extraordinary, large, luminous, framed by long lashes, and filled with a light that had no business existing in Ojuelegba Market. They were the eyes of someone who had suffered, but had not let suffering steal her joy. Eyes that still believed in goodness. Oga na 500 naira for 3, she said in Pidgin English, her voice as warm as sun on skin. Then she really looked at him, at his Italian shoes, his Patek Philippe, the cut of his traditional agbada, and her eyes widened. Ah, but Olga like you know they buy yam for market-o. You go send your house girl. I don't have a house girl, he lied. He had 3. She laughed, a sound like church bells. Olga, you funny. Okay, make I package yam for you? As she bent to select the best yams, Obiora noticed the cross around her neck. Simple, silver, catching the morning light. He noticed her hands, rough from work, but graceful as they wrapped his purchase in old newspaper. He noticed the way other traders greeted her with genuine affection, calling her Sister Adana, the way children ran to her stall for sweets she kept in her wrapper pocket. She was beloved. In this market of hustlers and survivors, she was beloved. Your name? He asked, surprising himself. She hesitated, something flickering behind those luminous eyes. Caution, perhaps, or recognition of the danger that men like him represented to girls like her. Adana, she finally said. Meaning father's daughter? Obiora, he replied. Meaning the people's heart. Her laugh this time was softer, sadder. Your name, sweet Shah. But for Lagos, not only money be people's heart. He should have walked away then. Should have taken his overpriced yams and returned to his insulated world. But he found himself saying, not everyone. She studied him for a long moment, those extraordinary eyes seeing too much. Then she smiled again. And it was different from the customer service smile. Smaller, more real, tinged with something like pity. You get kind face, Olga Obiora, she said softly. But your eyes don't tire. Make God give you rest. No one had looked at him, really looked at him in years. No one had seen past the power and the money to the exhausted soul beneath. He stood there in Ojuelegba market, surrounded by his nervous security men, holding a package of yams, and felt tears prick his eyes for the first time since his mother's death 15 years ago. Can I see you again? The words escaped before his mind could censor them. Adana's smile faded. Olga, I know be that kind of girl. I know, he said quickly. I know you're not. That's why I want to see you. She looked away, conflict written across her beautiful face. When she looked back, there was a resigned wisdom in her eyes that no 23-year-old should possess. Olga, a man like you and girl like me, that story no to end well. I don't see him before. Maybe this time it will be different, he said, knowing it was a lie even as he spoke it. Maybe, she whispered, and he knew she knew it was a lie too. But she gave him her phone number anyway, written in careful letters on the back of a church flyer. And as Obiora walked away from Ojuelegba market that morning, his security detail confused by the spring in his step, he didn't realize he had just signed both their death warrants. What happens next will change. Everything you think. You know about love and destruction. But first we need to understand who Adana really was. Adana Okafor's story began in tragedy and was baptized in loss. She had been born in a village near Owerri to parents who loved God more than they feared poverty. Her father had been a school teacher, her mother a nurse. They weren't rich, but they had something more valuable: integrity, faith, and dreams for their only daughter. Those dreams died on a rain-slicked highway when Adana was 17. A drunk driver, a trailer with failed brakes, and in one screaming moment of twisted metal and broken glass, she became an orphan. Her uncle in Lagos had taken her in, but taking in meant a thin mat in a corridor of his cramped Ajagunle flat, shared with 5 cousins. It meant dropping out of school to contribute to the household. It meant hawking pure water in traffic under the burning Lagos sun until her aunt, pitying her raw determination, helped her get the market stall. For 6 years, Adana had sold yams and vegetables in Ojuelegba. She woke at 4 a.m. to get the freshest produce from Oke Aaron Market. She haggled with suppliers in Yoruba she'd learned phonetically. She saved every spare kobo in a wooden box under her mat, dreaming of going back to school, maybe studying nursing like her mother. But Adana's poverty hadn't made her bitter. Instead, she had chosen, and it was a choice, made fresh every morning, to be a light in the darkness of Lagos. She gave credit to struggling mothers who would pay her back in installments. She taught the area boys who tried to extort her to read and write instead, treating them like wayward brothers. She sang in the choir at her uncle's Pentecostal church every Sunday. her voice lifting above the enthusiastic off-key congregation like a dove above chaos. People said Adana had anointing, that special grace that made even hardened Lagos hustlers soften in her presence. Prostitutes from the nearby hotel would stop by her stall for prayers. Okada riders would pause their reckless driving to greet her. Children followed her like she was the Pied Piper, and she always had time for them. Always had a sweet or a story or a prayer. She had been proposed to 7 times by traders, by a young banker who bought his mother's vegetables from her, by her pastor's nephew, by a returnee from Germany who saw her at church. She had refused them all gently but firmly, not because she didn't want love. God knew she dreamed of it, of a small house with a veranda, children's laughter, a man who would hold her at night and tell her she was safe. But Adana had learned something in her 17 years of watching her parents. Pure love in her 6 years surviving. Lagos. She would rather be alone than be with someone who didn't see her soul. She had kissed only one boy at 16, a shy moment behind her father's chicken coop that tasted of mango and innocence. She had never gone further. Not from prudishness, but from a bone-deep conviction that her body was a temple, and she wouldn't let just anyone worship there. This was the woman Obiora Nnamdi began to pursue, with the same ruthless focus he'd once used to destroy business rivals. He came back the next day with a proposition. Be his personal chef. He would pay her more in a month than she made in a year at her stall. All she had to do was cook traditional Igbo meals for him 3 times a week at his Banana Island home. Adana refused. Oga, I know you. How I go enter your house? So he came to the market every day, buying vegetables he didn't need, sending his security to wait in the nearby motor park so they wouldn't intimidate her. Slowly, carefully, he began to tell her about himself, not the official story in the newspapers, but the truth. About growing up poor in Anambra, about his mother who died believing he was still the good boy who served as altar boy in their village church, about the loneliness of success, the hollowness of winning when there was no one genuine to celebrate with. He made himself vulnerable in a way he hadn't since childhood, and Adana, with her tender heart, began to soften. You need Jesus, Oga, she told him one afternoon, and she meant it without judgment. I need you, he replied, and he meant it like a drowning man needs shore. 6 weeks after their first meeting, she agreed to have dinner with him. Not at a fancy restaurant where society photographers might catch them, she made that clear. Somewhere simple, somewhere she could leave if she felt unsafe. He took her to a modest buka in Surulere, a place so far beneath his usual standards that his driver thought it was a joke. But Obiora sat on a plastic chair, eating pounded yam with his hands, watching Adana laugh at the buka owner's jokes, and felt something he'd thought was dead stir in his chest. Hope. Why me? Adana asked as they walked by the roadside afterward, evening traffic roaring around them like a beast. You fit marry any big girl for Lagos? Senators' daughters. Beauty queens. Why market girl like me? Obiora stopped walking. A Danfo bus roared past, its conductor shouting destinations. The air smelled of suya and exhaust fumes. And standing there on the cracked pavement of Adeniran Ogunsanya Street, this man who had dined with presidents looked at this girl who sold yams and told her the truth. Because when I look at you, Adana, I remember who I was supposed to become. You're everything I destroyed in myself to survive this city. You're proof that goodness still exists. And if someone like you could love someone like me, maybe I'm not completely lost. Tears shimmered in her eyes. Obiora, I know be your salvation. Only God fit save you. Then pray for me, he whispered, taking her rough, work-worn hands in his soft, blood-stained ones. Pray that I become worthy of you. Right there, as Lagos traffic flowed around them like a river around stones, Adana closed her eyes and prayed. She prayed in Igbo and English, asking God to heal this broken man, to restore what he had lost, to lead him back to the light. And as Obiora listened to her prayer, feeling her hands warm in his, he made a promise to himself. He would change. He would be better. For her, he would become the man his mother thought he was. It was the last honest promise he ever made. But what Obiora didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that his love was about to trigger a war that would consume everything. 3 months after their first meeting, Obiora Namdi did something that shocked Lagos society to its core. He proposed to a market girl, not with a discreet affair or a small house, in Lekki, where he could keep her as a mistress. With a proper introduction to her uncle's family in Ajagunla, with bride price and traditional rites, with his intention splashed across the society pages, whether the editors wanted to print it or not. Billionaire oil mogul to marry market trader, the headlines screamed. The blogs went wild. His phone rang off the hook. Business partners confused. Society friends scandalized. His late mother's relatives from the village calling to ask if he'd been bewitched with juju. Obiora didn't care. For the first time in 20 years. He didn't care about appearances or strategy or what anyone thought. Because in those 3 months, Adana had performed a miracle. She had made him feel clean. She had refused to move into his Banana Island mansion, insisting on staying with her uncle until they were properly married. She had refused expensive gifts, accepting only a modest smartphone so he could call her, and a sewing machine because she'd mentioned wanting to learn tailoring. She had set boundaries he'd never encountered. No sex before marriage. No late-night visits to her uncle's house. No displays of wealth that would embarrass her church community. And Obiora, the man who had taken whatever he wanted for 2 decades, had submitted to her terms like a soldier to his general. Because when Adana looked at him with those luminous eyes and said, "I'm falling in love with the man you're becoming, not the man you were," he would have walked through fire to keep being that man. He started attending her Pentecostal church in Ajagunle, sitting on hard wooden benches. While the pastor preached about redemption and the congregation shouted, "Amen," he met with his pastor privately, confessing sins that made the old man's face go pale, praying for forgiveness with tears streaming down his face. He started divesting from some of his more questionable business dealings, trying to clean money that could never truly be clean. Adana's love was transforming him, and he was terrified of losing it. But Lagos doesn't forgive transformation. Lagos punishes it. The first warning came from his business partner, Chief Aranzi, over expensive brandy in Obiora's study. "Oga, this market girl go destroy you," Chief said, his voice heavy with concern. "The other big man, them they laugh. Say you done lose your sense. Some of them, they even plan to move against you for the Port Harcourt oil block contract. Them say Manway marry market girl no fit handle big business again. Let them try," Obiora replied calmly. "I'm done playing their games, Chief. I'm done being their monster." Chief Arinzi's face went grave. "Obiora, you no fit just stop being who you be. The things we don't do, the people we know our secrets. You think say if you turn born-again Christian, all that go just disappear. You didn't build your kingdom on bones, my brother. You no fit just walk away." "Watch me," Obiora said. But Chief Arinzi was right. You don't walk away from the Lagos underworld. It follows you. It owns you. And when you try to leave, it reminds you of the price. The second warning came in blood. Obiora's most trusted driver, Emmanuel, a loyal Ado man who had been with him for 8 years, was found dead in Badagry Creeks, his body bloated from 3 days in the water. The police called it suicide. Everyone knew it was a message. The third warning was more direct. A midnight phone call from a voice he hadn't heard in 5 years. Senator Okonkwo, the man whose whistleblowing protege had fled to South Africa and never been heard from again. "I hear you're getting married, Obiora." The senator's voice was oil over gravel. "To a very simple girl. I'm sure she's lovely. Be a shame if something happened to her. You know how dangerous Lagos can be, especially Ojuelegba Market. So many thieves, so many accidents." The threat was clear. Come back into the fold, continue playing the game, or lose everything. That night, Obiora couldn't sleep. He stood on his balcony, looking out at the lights of Lagos sprawling before him like a beast pretending to sleep, and faced the truth he'd been avoiding. He couldn't protect Adana and keep changing. The world he'd lived in for 20 years wouldn't allow it. His enemies would use her to control him, And he would have to choose, become the monster again to protect her, or lose her trying to stay clean. The old Obiora would have made the choice instantly. Become the monster. Eliminate the threats. Show Lagos why they called him Oga Patapata. But the new Obiora, the man Adana was creating with her, prayers and her faith and her stubborn belief in his goodness, hesitated. And in that hesitation, everything fell apart. It happened on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks before their traditional wedding. Adana had closed her stall early to attend choir practice at church. Obiora had been in a meeting with lawyers, trying to legitimize some of his business holdings, preparing for his new life as a man who could look his future wife in the eye without shame. The phone call came at 7:47 p.m. Oga! It was Adana's uncle, his voice panicked and broken. Them don't carry Adana. Armed robbers for the market. Them shoot 2 people. Them carry 5 girls, including your wife. Oh God, oh God. The world went silent. Not quiet, silent, as if God himself had pressed mute on creation. Obiora heard his own heartbeat like thunder, heard the sound of his phone cracking in his grip, heard the death of the man he'd been trying to become. Where? He said, his voice flat and cold as a grave. We done report to police. But Oga, you know how police be— Where? 20 minutes later, Obiora was not in his luxury car. He was in a nondescript Toyota with Chief Arinzi and 3 men whose faces you wouldn't remember even if you met them twice. Men whose specialty was finding people who didn't want to be found. The old Obiora had awakened, and he was not gentle. Within an hour, using contacts he'd sworn to Adana he'd cut off, threatening people he'd promised God he'd forgiven, paying bribes in amounts that would feed Ojuelegba Market for a year. He had answers. It wasn't random armed robbers. It was a kidnapping, professional and targeted. The other 4 girls were collateral damage, meant to disguise the real target, Adana. The mastermind was one of Senator Okonkwo's people, a man called Cap, who ran the underground kidnapping networks in Lagos. The holding location was a compound in Ikorodu, disguised as a poultry farm. The message was clear. Obiora could have his girl back when he came back to being who he was meant to be, a monster who served monsters. We call police, Chief Arinzi said, but his voice was resigned. He already knew the answer. No, Obiora said. We go ourselves. Obiora, you done kill person in 15 years. You done changed? I haven't changed. Chief. Obiora's voice could have cut steel. I just put on a costume for a few months. Now it's time to take it off. What happened at that poultry farm in Ikorodu was never reported in newspapers. The police were paid to classify it as gang violence. 7 men died that night. Not from bullets, Obiora didn't want noise. From quieter methods. Methods that required getting close. Methods that required looking into eyes as the light left them. The man he'd tried to become died there too, in the blood and the darkness, with every neck he broke and every life he ended. But he didn't care, because at the end of it, he was carrying Adana out of that hell. Her dress torn, her face bruised, her luminous eyes wide with shock, but thank God, still alive. The other 4 girls too, all alive. That mattered to the old Obiora, even if he couldn't fully remember why anymore. He took Adana not to a hospital but to his Banana Island mansion, where a private doctor was waiting. The other girls he sent home with enough money to relocate their families if they chose, and with security that would watch them for the next year. And then he sat by Adana's bedside as she slept, her hand in his, and felt nothing at all. The man who had held her hand and promised to change was dead. The man sitting here now was the one who had always been underneath, the Prince of Lagos Darkness, the Oga Patapata who solved problems with violence and money and cold-blooded efficiency. When Adana woke the next morning, she looked at him, and what she saw made her weep. "What did you do?" she whispered. "What I had to," he replied, his voice empty of everything except truth. "How many?" "Does it matter?" She started to cry harder, and he held her, this broken saint and this remade monster. And they both knew that everything had changed. "I can't marry you," she said finally, the words cutting deeper than any knife he'd used that night. "The man I love, he died last night, didn't he?" Yes, Obiora said, because lying to her now would be the greatest cruelty. But the man who will protect you, who will burn down Lagos before he lets anyone touch you again, he's immortal, and he's not letting you go. Adana looked at him with those eyes that had once seen the possibility of his redemption, and now only saw the truth of his damnation. You're not protecting me, Obiora, she said softly. You're imprisoning us both. She was right. But he didn't care. What happens next will test the very meaning of love, but be warned. This is where the story gets darker still. Adana did not go back to her uncle's house in Ajagunle. Obiora wouldn't allow it. It wasn't safe, he said. His enemies knew where she lived. They would try again. He wasn't wrong, but he also wasn't right. The truth was simpler and more terrible. He couldn't bear to let her out of his sight. The fear that had consumed him during those hours when she was taken had metastasized into something darker, a possessive obsession that wore the mask of protection. He moved her into a guest wing of his Banana Island mansion, hired round-the-clock female security, installed cameras everywhere except her bedroom and bathroom, had his chef prepare all her meals, provided everything she could possibly need, except the one thing she wanted most: freedom. It's just for a few weeks, he told her, until the situation calms down. Weeks became a month, then 2. Adana's market stall sat empty in Ojuelegba. Her choir missed her voice. Her uncle's family called constantly, worried, asking when she was coming home. Obiora took the calls himself, his voice pleasant but firm. Adana was safe. She would visit soon. Don't worry. But Adana was not safe. She was suffocating. Obiora, I need to go out, she said one morning at breakfast on the terrace, the Lagos lagoon glittering below them like broken promises. Just to church, just for a few hours. I'll have Pastor come here, he replied, not looking up from his newspaper. He can pray with you in the chapel. I don't want Pastor to come here. I want to go to church, to see my friends, to be normal. Now he looked at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her stomach clench. Adana, there is no normal anymore. Don't you understand? They tried to take you from me. They will try again. Every moment you're not here, I'm in hell wondering if this is the moment I lose you. So I'm supposed to be in hell instead? A luxurious hell, but hell all the same. His jaw tightened. This is paradise compared to what would happen if they got you again. You don't know that. Maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe... I know, he interrupted, his voice dropping to something dangerous. I know because I received 3 more threats this week. I know because Senator Okonkwo is not done playing games. I know because this city is full of people who would hurt you just to hurt me. So no, Adana, you are not leaving this compound until I've eliminated every single threat. And how long will that take? Months? Years? Forever? As long as it takes. Adana stood up, her chair scraping against marble. You say you love me, but this isn't love, Obiora. This is ownership. You're treating me like one of your oil blocks, something to acquire and control. He stood too, moving around the table with predatory grace. When he reached her, he cupped her face with hands that had killed men 2 months ago. Hands that touched her now with aching gentleness. You're right, he said quietly. I do own you. From the moment I took your virginity on that beach, from the moment your blood marked you as mine, you became part of me, and I don't let go of what's mine. She shook her head, tears streaming. That's not how love works. No, he agreed. That's how my love works. And I'm sorry if it's not the fairy tale you wanted, but it's all I have to give. He kissed her then, not with the tentative sweetness of their early courtship, but with desperate hunger. And God help her, Adana kissed him back, because buried beneath her fear and frustration was a terrible truth. Part of her was drawn to the very darkness she claimed to hate. Part of her felt sickeningly safe in this cage. Part of her loved him not despite his obsession, but because of it. What did that make her? That night, alone in her luxurious prison, Adana prayed. But the words felt hollow, bouncing off the designer ceiling without reaching heaven. She had always believed that love was God's greatest gift, that it elevated and purified. But Obiora's love was corrupting her. She could feel it happening. Feel herself adapting to captivity like a bird that forgets how to fly. She thought of her mother, that woman of faith who had loved her husband with simple, pure devotion. What would her mother say if she could see her? Now, living in sinful luxury, with a man who wasn't her husband, complicit in her own imprisonment? But then again, her mother had never been kidnapped, had never felt the terror of men with guns and empty eyes, had never known the primal relief of being saved, however violently. Maybe this was the price of surviving Lagos. Maybe innocence was a luxury only the protected could afford. The thought terrified her more than any kidnapper had. Days blended into each other in the mansion. Obiora hired tutors for her. She had always wanted to finish her education, and now she had nothing but time. He ordered fabric and bought her an industrial sewing machine. When he learned about her design dreams, he was trying, in his twisted way, to give her purpose inside her cage. And slowly, insidiously, it started to work. Adana began designing clothes, gorgeous pieces that blended traditional Igbo patterns with modern cuts. She started taking online classes in business management. She swam in the infinity pool, worked out in the private gym, read books from Obiora's extensive library. She was becoming someone new, someone who could almost forget she was a prisoner, until the night she saw him kill again. It was 2 a.m. when the security alarm woke them. Obiora was out of bed instantly, ordering Adana to stay put as he grabbed a gun from a safe she hadn't known existed. She heard shouting, then gunfire, then silence. When he returned an hour later, there was blood on his shirt. "What happened?" she whispered. "Someone tried to break in. They won't try again." "Did you? Are they dead?" "Yes." He said it calmly, like reporting the weather. "I told you, Adana. I will burn down Lagos before I let anyone touch you." She should have been horrified. She should have run, but instead she found herself walking to him, taking his blood-stained hands, leading him to the bathroom. Found herself helping him wash the blood away, her hands steady even as her mind screamed. "Who were they?" she asked as she cleaned his knuckles. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." He looked at her, something breaking behind his eyes. "They were boys, Adana, 18, maybe 20, hired by someone who wants to hurt me through you. They probably had families, mothers who will cry. And I killed them without hesitation because they were between me and keeping you safe." "Jesus," she breathed. "Jesus," he laughed bitterly, "is not here. This is Lagos, my love. This is hell, and I'm the devil keeping you safe in it." Adana finished cleaning his hands in silence. Then she did something that surprised them both. She pulled him into an embrace, holding this monster who wore her lover's face, feeling him shake with something that might have been tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered into his chest. "I'm sorry I made you love me." "Don't be," he said, his arms crushing her closer. "You're the only real thing in my entire life. Everything else is just blood and money and lies. But you're true, and I'll damn my soul 1,000 times over before I let this city take you from me." And there, at 3 a.m. in a Banana Island bathroom, with the blood of boys barely men washed down the drain, Adana Okafor made peace with her damnation. She would stay, not because she had to, but because leaving would destroy them both. He would never let her go, and she, God help her, she didn't want to break him more than she already had. This wasn't the love story she had prayed for, but it was the one she had. But Lagos wasn't done testing them yet. The worst was still to come. 6 months into her gilded imprisonment, Adana discovered she was pregnant. She took the test in secret, staring at the 2 pink lines in the bathroom of her wing, feeling her entire world shift. A child, Obiora's child, growing inside her body in this fortress of blood and obsession. She didn't tell him immediately. For 3 days, she carried the secret like a stone in her chest, trying to understand what it meant. A child would chain her to him forever. A child born from violence and obsession and a love that had curdled into something toxic. A child who would grow up in this world of security, details and midnight, killings, and a father who loved so intensely he forgot how to love properly. But a child was also innocent. A child was hope. A child was proof that even in the darkest soil, life could grow. On the 4th day, she told him, Obiora was in his study, reviewing security reports, when she entered. She'd learned to read his moods by now, the set of his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. Today he was tense. Another threat, probably. There were always threats. "Obiora," she said quietly. He looked up and his face softened instantly. It always did when he saw her. That was the thing about his obsession. It was so complete, so consuming that in his eyes, she saw her own face reflected like a goddess. "Adana, what's wrong?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air. Between them, like a prayer or a curse, she couldn't tell which. Obiora went absolutely still. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't breathe. Then he stood slowly, walked to her, and dropped to his knees before her. His hands trembled as he placed them on her still flat stomach. "You're sure?" His voice cracked. 3 tests, all positive. He pressed his forehead against her belly, and she felt wetness seep through her dress. Tears. Obiora was crying. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." She ran her fingers through his hair. This powerful man kneeling before her like a supplicant before a shrine. "Are you happy?" He looked up at her, his face wet with tears, and she saw something she hadn't seen in months, a glimpse of the man he'd been trying to become, the man before the kidnapping, before the killing, before the complete surrender to his darker nature. "Happy?" He laughed, the sound broken and beautiful. "Adana, you've given me something I didn't know I could have. A family, a future, a reason beyond survival." He stood, pulling her into his arms. "I promise you, I will be a better man for this child. I will. Will you let us leave this house?" She interrupted gently. His arms tightened. "Adana, our child can't grow up in a prison, Obiora. Even a beautiful one. Children need sunshine and playgrounds and other children. They need normalcy. I'll build a playground here. Hire other children to— Listen to yourself!" She pulled back to look at him. "Hire children? This is madness. You know it's madness." His jaw clenched. "It's safety. It's a cage. And I won't raise our child in a cage. Then what do you want me to do, Adana?" His voice rose, frustration and fear bleeding through. "Pretend the threats don't exist? Let you walk around Lagos like a target waiting to be shot? You want me to risk our child? I want you to trust God!" She shouted back, surprising herself. "I want you to have faith that there's more to life than your paranoia and your violence and your need to control everything." "God," he said bitterly, "wasn't there when they took you?" "I was. My guns were. My willingness to do whatever it took was. Don't talk to me about God, Adana. God abandoned me in this city a long time ago." "Then maybe it's time to find him again," she said quietly. "Because this life you've built for us, it's not living. It's just surviving. And I don't want our child to just survive. I want them to live." Obiora stared at her for a long moment, something warring behind his eyes. Then he turned and walked out of the study without another word. Adana stood there, one hand on her belly, and wondered if she'd just made everything better or infinitely worse. The answer came 3 days later. Obiora called a meeting. Not with her, with his enemies. He sat in a private room at the Echo Hotel, surrounded by the men who'd made his life hell for the past 6 months. Senator Okonkwo, Chief Arinze. 3 other big men whose names carried weight in Lagos's underworld. Men who controlled ports and oil blocks and politicians. "Gentlemen," Obiora said, his voice calm, "I'm here to negotiate peace." Senator Okonkwo laughed, a sound like stones grinding. "The mighty Obiora Nnamdi wants peace. Has your market girl made you soft?" "She's made me a father," Obiora replied evenly. "She's pregnant. And I find I no longer have the stomach for our games." "So you're out?" Chief Arinze asked, genuine concern in his voice. "Obiora, you can't just leave this life." "I'm not asking permission. I'm offering a deal." Obiora leaned forward. "I'll give you the Port Harcourt oil blocks, the 3 terminals in Apapa, the telecom, contracts in Abuja, 60% of my empire. All I want is to be left alone to raise my family in peace." The room went silent. "That's—" Senator Okonkwo's eyes narrowed. "That's over 30 billion naira you're offering us." "I know what it's worth," Obiora said. The question is your pride worth more than 30 billion naira? Because you can keep playing these games, keep sending men to my house, and I'll keep killing them. Or you can take my offer, get insanely rich, and let me fade into obscurity. Your choice. Senator Okonkwo studied him for a long moment. And if we refuse? Obiora's smile was cold and sharp as a blade. Then I stop playing defense and start playing offense. I have files, Senator, on all of you. Swiss bank account numbers, details of every crooked deal, names of officials on your payroll. If anything happens to me or my family, those files go public. Simultaneously. To every newspaper, every EFCC office, every foreign embassy in Nigeria. You'd destroy yourself in the process, another big man noted. Yes, Obiora agreed. But I destroy you all first. And unlike you, I don't have political careers or family legacies to protect. All I have is a pregnant woman I love and a child I'll never meet if you kill me. That makes me very dangerous, gentlemen, because I have nothing left to lose. The silence stretched. Then Senator Okonkwo began to laugh. Genuine laughter this time. You're insane, Obiora. You know that? Love will do that to a man. 30 billion naira, the senator mused. And you just walk away? I walk away. I keep enough to live comfortably, invest legally, raise my child in peace. You get everything else. Everyone wins. Chief Arinze shook his head in wonder. This girl has turned you into a completely different person. No, Obiora said quietly. She reminded me who I was before I became who you needed me to be. There's a difference. More silence. Then Senator Okonkwo extended his hand across the table. Deal, he said. But Obiora, if you ever change your mind and try to come back, I won't, Obiora assured him, shaking the offered hand. This game is yours now. I'm done! When Obiora returned to Banana Island that night, Adana was in the garden, the one place he allowed her to be outside. She was singing softly to her belly, an Igbo lullaby, and the sight of her stopped him in his tracks. She looked up when she sensed him. What did you do? I bought us freedom, he said simply. He told her everything, the meeting, the deal, the cost. Watched her face cycle through shock, disbelief, hope. 30 billion naira? She whispered. Obiora, that's your entire empire. My empire was built on bones and blood, he replied, sitting beside her on the garden bench. I don't want our child inheriting that. I want them to inherit something clean, something good, even if it means starting over. Adana's eyes filled with tears. You did this for us, and I did this for you, he corrected. Because you were right. This isn't living, and I want to live, Adana. For the first time in 20 years, I actually want to live. She threw her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. Thank you, I thought. I thought I'd lost you forever. You saved me, he murmured into her hair. The moment I saw you in that market, singing to yams like they were children, you saved me. It just took me a while to realize it. They sat there in the garden as the Lagos night fell around them, two broken people who'd somehow managed to build something, whole from their shattered pieces. So what now? Adana asked eventually. Obiora smiled, a real smile, the first she'd seen in months. Now, we get married properly. We find a nice normal house, maybe in Lekki with a real garden where our child can play. I invest what's left in legitimate businesses. You open your fashion boutique. We go to your Pentecostal church every Sunday, and I actually mean the prayers this time. We live, Adana. We actually live. Can it really be that simple? No, he admitted. It won't be simple. I have demons to fight every single day. I'll probably be paranoid about your safety forever. I'll need therapy, probably, to learn how to be a normal husband and father. But I'll try. For you and our child, I'll try. Adana took his face in her hands. The man I fell in love with in Ojuelegba, Market, the one who sat on plastic chairs and ate pounded yam with his hands and asked me about my dreams. Is he really back? He's trying to come back, Obiora said honestly. Whether he succeeds? That's the journey we'll take together. She kissed him then, and it was different from all the desperate, possessive kisses of the past months. This was tender, hopeful, the kiss of two people choosing to believe in redemption. But this is Lagos, and in Lagos, peace always comes with a price. The wedding happened 3 months later in Adana's Pentecostal church in Najagunle. Not the grand society event Obiora's old life would have demanded, but a simple ceremony filled with Adana's people, market traders, choir members, her uncle's family, the area boys she'd taught to read. Obiora wore traditional Igbo isiagu, and when he knelt before Adana's uncle to pay the bride price, a modest amount by his standards, but presented with genuine respect, there were tears in the old man's eyes. "You take care of her," the uncle said in Igbo. "She is precious beyond money." "I know," Obiora replied in the same language. "I will spend my life proving I'm worthy of her." The reception was at a modest hall in Surulere. No champagne flown in from France, no ice sculptures or society photographers. Just jollof rice, goat meat, and Fanta in glass bottles. But when Obiora danced with his new wife, her belly just beginning to show. He felt richer than he'd ever felt in his Banana Island mansion. This was real. This was his. They moved into a 4-bedroom house in Lekki, Phase 1. Comfortable but not ostentatious. Obiora kept only 2 security men, and even those, Adana insisted, must dress casually and not intimidate her neighbors. He enrolled in an executive MBA program, learning to build businesses legitimately. Adana opened her boutique, Ada's Designs, and her clothes, bold, beautiful fusions of tradition and modernity, began attracting attention. For 6 months, they were happy, genuinely impossibly happy. Obiora attended every prenatal appointment, his hand always seeking Adana's, his eyes wide with wonder at every ultrasound. He painted the nursery himself, pale yellow, because they wanted to be surprised by the baby's gender. He interviewed pediatricians with the same intensity he'd once used to vet oil deals. He was trying so hard to be normal, and slowly, miraculously, it was working. The nightmares came less frequently. The paranoia began to ease. He could watch Adana go to the market without having a panic attack. He could sleep through the night without checking the security cameras every hour. He was healing. Until the day Chief Arinze came to visit. Obiora was in the nursery assembling a crib when the doorbell rang. He'd lost touch with most of his old contacts, so he was surprised to see his former business partner on his doorstep, looking decades older than he had a year ago. "Chief?" Obiora greeted him cautiously. "This is unexpected." "Can I come in, Obiora? It's important." They sat in the living room, and Chief Arinze wasted no time. "Senator Okonkwo is dead," he said flatly. Obiora felt his blood go cold. "How?" "Heart attack, officially. But everyone knows it was poison. The Port Harcourt oil block deal you gave him? It was cursed. Literally cursed. Some traditionalist from the Niger Delta put juju on it because their land was destroyed. Everyone who touched that deal has suffered. The senator is dead. Chief Okoro's son was killed in a car crash. Chief Bossman's empire is collapsing from EFCC investigations. And you?" Obiora asked quietly. "I'm dying," Chief Arinze said, and pulled back his sleeve to reveal arms covered in strange, oozing sores. "The doctors can't explain it, but the Babalawo I visited could. The curse is killing everyone connected to that deal, everyone who took their piece of your empire." Obiora's mind raced. "But I gave it away. I'm not— You're the source." "Obiora." Chief's voice was gentle, pitying. "The curse originated with you. You built that empire on blood, and now the blood is claiming its payment. Not from you directly, that would be too kind. From everyone you loved enough to walk away for." The room spun. "Adana!" "And your child," Chief confirmed. "I'm sorry, my brother. I'm so sorry. But I had to warn you. The other survivors, those of us still breathing, we're coming for you. Not because we want to, but because the Babalawo said the only way to break the curse is to— To what?" Obiora's voice was deadly calm. "To kill you," Chief Arinze said, tears streaming down his ravaged face. "And everyone you love. To erase your bloodline completely. The curse dies with you." "Jesus Christ. I'm telling you this because you saved my life once long ago. Before all this. Before we became monsters." Chief stood, his movements painful. "You have maybe 3 days before the others realize what needs to be done. Use that time, Obiora. Run, take your wife and disappear. Change your names. Leave Nigeria. It's the only way. After Chief left, Obiora sat in his living room, staring at the nursery door, at the yellow walls and the half-assembled crib and the stuffed animals. Adana had been collecting and felt his carefully reconstructed world crumble to dust. He'd thought he could escape, thought love and repentance and 30 billion naira could buy him redemption. But Lagos doesn't forgive. Nigeria doesn't forget. And the blood he'd spilled wasn't content to stay in the past. When Adana came home from the boutique that evening, glowing with the news that a major fashion magazine wanted to feature her designs, she found Obiora in the nursery, sitting on the floor beside the unfinished crib, staring at nothing. Obiora? She lowered herself carefully beside him, her 7-month belly making the movement awkward. What's wrong? He looked at her, and she saw in his eyes the same emptiness. She'd seen the night he'd killed to save her. Tell me about your dreams, he said softly. What? When you were a little girl in your village, before your parents died, what did you dream about? Adana touched his face, worried. Obiora, you're scaring me. Please, just tell me. So she did. Told him about dreams of becoming a nurse like her mother, of helping people, of having a small house with a veranda where she could watch her children play. Simple dreams, good dreams, the dreams of a girl who believed the world was fundamentally kind. And now, he asked, what do you dream about now? This, she said simply, gesturing around the yellow nursery. Yumi, our baby, Sunday dinners with my uncle's family, building Ada's designs into something real, growing old with you. Why are you asking me this? Because I need to know, he said, what I'm destroying. Then he told her everything. Chief Arinze's visit, the curse, the 3 days, the choice. Adana listened in silence, one hand protectively over her belly. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. So we run? She finally asked. We run. Tonight, I have money in accounts they don't know about. We can go to Ghana, get new identities, start completely over. Our child will be born someone else. You'll never see Nigeria again, never see your family, but you'll live. That's all that matters. No, Adana said. Obiora looked at her, confused. No, I won't run, Obiora. I won't let some curse, some superstition, chase me away from my home, my family, my life. Her eyes flashed with something fierce. And I won't let you give up. Everything you've worked to become, because of your past. You've changed. You've repented. God has forgiven you. Adana, this isn't about forgiveness. It's exactly about forgiveness. She struggled to her feet, and he rose to steady her. Do you know what faith means, Obiora? It means trusting God even when everything looks impossible. It means believing that His power is greater than any curse, any threat, any evil. And if we run, if we hide, we're saying we don't believe that. We're saying the darkness is stronger than the light. I'm saying I love you too much to risk your life on faith, Obiora countered. I've seen too much evil in this world to trust in miracles. Then it's time you learned, Adana said firmly. We're not running. We're going to church. We're going to pray. And we're going to trust that the God who brought us together can keep us together. And if you're wrong, if the curse is real and our child, then we'll die knowing we didn't run from our faith when it mattered. Most. Her voice was steel, wrapped in velvet. I won't raise a child who learns that when things get hard, you abandon everything you believe in. I won't, Obiora. I'd rather die standing in my faith than live running from my fear. Obiora stared at this woman, this impossible woman who'd transformed him with her stubborn belief in goodness, and felt something break open in his chest. You're insane, he whispered. Yes, she agreed, smiling through tears. But I'm your wife, and our child deserves parents who believe in more than just survival. They deserve parents who believe in miracles. So they didn't run. Instead, they went to church. And what happened next? Well, that's where this story becomes something else entirely. The church in Ajagunle was packed that Wednesday night for what they called deliverance service, a prayer meeting, dedicated to breaking spiritual bondages and curses. Obiora felt ridiculous being there. This former crime lord sitting among market women and Okada riders, but Adana's hand in his kept him grounded. She'd told Pastor everything, and the old man had simply nodded and said, "God specializes in impossible cases." The service was unlike anything Obiora had experienced. People wept and wailed, calling out to God in Yoruba, Igbo, Pidgin English. The pastor anointed them with oil that smelled of olive and faith, praying in that particular Nigerian Pentecostal way that was half language, half spiritual warfare. "Whatever spirit is hunting this family," Pastor declared, his voice booming, "it must bow to the name of Jesus." Every curse spoken, every juju prepared, every arrow fired in the dark, they are null and void by the blood of the Lamb. Obiora wanted to believe. God, how he wanted to believe. But 3 days came and went, and Chief Arinze's warning echoed in his mind. On the 4th day, nothing happened. 5th day, silence. 6th day, Obiora was beginning to hope. On the 7th day, Adana went into premature labor. The panic was immediate and consuming. 7 months, too early, far too early. Obiora rushed her to the hospital, his heart hammering, convinced this was it. The curse claiming its payment. His sins finally catching up to destroy the only good thing he'd ever created. In the delivery room, as Adana screamed and pushed and prayed, Obiora found himself doing something he hadn't done since his mother's death. He prayed. Really prayed. Not the rote recitations of church, but raw, desperate pleading. "Please," he whispered, tears streaming. "Please, not her. Not the baby. Take me instead. Take me, I'll go willingly, just please let them live." 12 hours later, his daughter was born. Tiny, barely 3 pounds, but alive, lungs screaming with indignant fury at being pulled into the world too soon. Adana sobbing with exhaustion and relief. And Obiora, this man who'd killed with his bare hands, standing in a delivery room holding a creature so small she fit in his palms, feeling his entire universe realign. "Chukwebuka," Adana whispered from the bed. "God is greater." That's her name. "Chukwebuka," Obiora repeated the syllables, feeling like prophecy. The baby spent 3 weeks in the NICU. 3 weeks of machines and monitors and terrified waiting. But she fought. God, how she fought. This tiny warrior with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn refusal to give up. And something strange began to happen. Chief Arinze called on the 18th day. His sores were healing. The doctors couldn't explain it. But the curse, if it had ever been real, seemed to be lifting. One by one, the other members of that cursed deal began to recover. Not all of them. Senator Okonkwo was still dead. And Chief Okoro's son couldn't be resurrected. But the bleeding stopped. The wave of destruction that had seemed unstoppable simply stopped. The Babalawo they consulted couldn't explain it, or wouldn't. He simply shook his head and muttered something about grace, stronger than juju. When Chukwebuka finally came home, healthy, thriving, impossibly perfect, Obiora sat in the yellow nursery he'd finished assembling, his daughter asleep on his chest, and felt the last chains of his past finally break. "I don't understand," he said to Adana, who was watching them from the doorway. "Why did it work? The prayers, the faith, why did it save us?" Adana came to sit beside them, her hand gentle on their daughter's back. "Maybe because curses only have the power we give them. Maybe because God really does specialize in impossible cases," she smiled. "Or maybe because a love strong enough to walk away from 30 billion naira is strong enough to break any curse. I don't know, Obiora. I just know we're here. We're alive. And that's miracle enough for me." Obiora looked down at his daughter, this impossibly small miracle sleeping trustingly on his chest, and thought about the man he'd been. The killer. The criminal. The obsessed, broken creature who'd imprisoned the woman he loved out of fear of losing her. That man was dead. Not redeemed. You couldn't redeem some sins. But transformed. Made into something new by love that was stubborn enough to believe in him even when he couldn't believe in himself. "I'm still going to be paranoid," he admitted. "Every time you take her out, every time she's out of my sight, I'm going to worry." "I know," Adana said gently. "And I'll probably never forgive myself for the things I did, the people I hurt. I know that too, so how do I live with that? How do I raise a daughter when I'm still carrying all that blood?" Adana took his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. You live with it by choosing every single day to be better than you were. You raise her by showing her that no one is beyond redemption. That love really can transform even the darkest soul. And when the guilt threatens to drown you, you remember that God's grace is sufficient. It has to be, Obiora, because if God can't forgive you, what hope does any of us have? Chukwuebuka stirred in her sleep, one tiny fist grabbing onto Obiora's finger with surprising strength. And in that moment, holding his daughter while his wife held him, Obiora Nnamdi made a choice. He chose to believe, not because it made logical sense, not because he deserved it, but because the alternative, drowning, in guilt and fear for the rest of his life, would mean his daughter grew up with a ghost for a father, and she deserved better than that. They all did. 10 years later, Obiora would stand in the audience of a fashion show, watching Adana's designs walk the runway at Lagos Fashion Week, and barely recognize the man he'd once been. Ada's designs had become a genuine success, featured in international magazines and worn by celebrities. Chukwuebuka was a bright, fierce 10-year-old who played football with neighborhood boys and sang in her mother's church choir. They'd had 2 more children, both boys, both healthy, both taught from birth about faith and second chances. Obiora had become a legitimate businessman. His company's known for ethical practices and good governance. He gave generously to charities that helped at-risk youth, trying in some small way to balance the scales of his past. He'd never told his children the full truth of who he'd been. That conversation could wait until they were older, but they knew their father had once been lost, and their mother had helped him find his way home. Some nights the nightmares still came. Memories of faces he'd hurt, lives he'd destroyed. On those nights, Adana would hold him and pray over him until the darkness receded, because that was their deal. She would be his light, and he would be her protector, and together they would be stronger than either of them could be alone. Was it a perfect love story? No. Perfect love stories didn't start with obsession and kidnapping and violence. But it was a real love story, one about 2 broken people who'd somehow managed to build something whole from their shattered pieces. One about a man who'd taken a woman's virginity and tried to take her entire life, only to discover she'd been taking his all along, not to possess it, but to redeem it. And in the end, isn't that what love is supposed to do? So that's the story of Obiora and Adana, the oil mogul and the market girl, the monster and the saint. The man who fell so hard he almost destroyed everything he touched, and the woman who loved him anyway. Was it Stockholm Syndrome? Toxic codependency? A genuine miracle? Maybe it was all 3. Maybe it was none. Maybe it was simply Lagos, this impossible city where anything can happen, where curses and prayers war in the streets, where love has to be fierce and a little bit crazy just to survive. What do you think? Could love this intense ever be healthy? Can a man who's done terrible things truly change? And most importantly, if you were Adana, would you have stayed or would you have run? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe, because we have more Nigerian love stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about. Matters of the heart. Until next time, remember, in Lagos, love doesn't save you from the darkness. It teaches you how to carry light into it. The end.
This is African Romance Folktale. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this very captivating story. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so as to be notified whenever we upload a new video. Join our membership so you will always be the first to get notified whenever we make any uploads. And we've uploaded more romantic love stories, specially created for our membership subscribers only. Check the description box to join now so you don't miss out. Furthermore, please support us by using the super thanks icon in between remix and download icon down below. Lastly, rate this story in a scale of 1 to 10. And don't forget to tell me where you're watching this video from. I am going to see you in another video. Bye.